Mr. Axiotis?
Yes.
Ms. Benitez?
Yes.
Pass 4-0, 6:04 PM.
return from executive session.
I'll second.
Mr. Exiotis, Mr. Rufner, Ms. Stimpert,
Yes.
Mr. Rufner,
Yes.
Mr. Exiotis,
Yes.
Ms. Benitez.
Yes.
Pass 4-0, 7:39 PM.
I'd like to add a motion to the agenda to direct the city manager to negotiate with John Barco for consideration as the Newton Falls Police Chief.
Can I second it?
Ms. Stimpert and Ms. Benitez, to add a motion to direct the city manager to negotiate an agreement with John Parker for
Correct.
position of police chief.
Mm-hmm.
Any discussion? Mr. Rufner,
Yes.
Ms. Stimpert,
Yes.
Mr.
Let's
Exiotis,
just clarify, this is to add the motion.
to add the motion
Yes.
to new business. Yes. And Ms. Benitez,
Yes.
the motion will be added to new business.
Yeah. Going to also add a motion for Bob Burke, fill the city council seat, pending verification of eligibility.
I'll second that.
Mayor made the motion. Ms. Stimpert,
Yes.
that, is the name Bob Burke?
Bob Burke, yeah,
B-U-R-K-E.
Burke or Berkey.
May I raise an issue?
Mhm.
I'm sorry to intrude. If I remember reading correctly, I think it would just be an appointment. I don't know that the mayor needs to make a motion to do that. I think that he would just announce his conclusion that he's making the appointment since the time for city council to do so has passed. That's my recollection. I hope I'm not overstating it.
Where would it be done?
All right, so the only
When would
thing,
he do that?
I think he would do it tonight just by making,
But in new business?
yes, a new business.
that's the only thing we'd have to do would be verify his address and voter registration, correct?
Yes, sir.
So it'd be a motion to appoint, or he would just
No.
appoint?
I think he would just appoint.
Point.
Yeah,
Okay.
we don't weigh in on it.
What's that?
We can't weigh in on it.
No.
I- The mayor shall appoint, but it'll be pending verification of address and his voter registration. Ready to move on to reports here? All right. Move on into Section 8 reports. Mayor has nothing to report. Council, Brian, do you have anything?
Yeah, I attended the planning and zoning meeting yesterday, or at least the attempt of a planning and zoning meeting. There are some concerns from that board with the role of secretary and the meeting minutes and the recording of meeting minutes. The way it was previously done with the city clerk attending those meetings and keeping the meeting minutes for these boards. Once the original city clerk was let go, boards were just told to deal with it and that it was their headache. And I feel like there's a lot of resistance on that, the members of that board right now for that role and responsibility. I don't have the correct answer to that, but I feel like that's something we're gonna have to have a discussion about. These boards need to function. We need accurate minutes. We're not even providing them with a recorder or any way to keep minutes. We're expecting them to do that on their own. So I don't know if we need a work session, but we need to come up with some answer to that problem.
Ms. Pat, do you have anything?
Nothing.
Ms. Jolie?
Just a couple things. Our next fire board meeting will be the 18th, Tuesday, the 18th, at 6 o'clock at the Township Building. I also attended the Planning and Zoning Board. And just to kind of piggyback with what Brian is saying, yeah, there are some concerns. I did reach out to Mr. Limbian and Mr. Novotny and talked about some things short-term, just to, we can get recorders for the different boards to use. Obviously, there's a lot more things that we need to address. In speaking with Mr. Limbian and Mr. Novotny, we need to come up with some type of policies or expectations. If that's during the work session, I'm all for that. But we need to figure out how to, what are the expectations and who's doing what and why, so that these boards can function as they are meant to function. They should be doing their field of expertise and bringing that information back to, you know, their admin, to city manager, and then ultimately to council if that's needed. So I'm all for a work session to figure that out, to look at whatever legislation that needs to be. I know the TIB had very similar issues and concerns. I'm not sure where that ended up. I hadn't heard anything more, but in speaking to both Mike and Jeff, they agree. So we need to put our heads together and figure that out. That's all I got.
Mr. Roofer, you have anything?
No, Mayor, I have nothing.
Mr. Lemmian, sir, do you have anything?
No, sir.
And Miss Jamie?
It's in the report, but the available fund balances were provided as we close the city books for February. You can take a look at those and pay close attention to both the unexpended fund balances and the ending fund balances for most of the funds. The final financial statements for 23-24 were submitted to the state auditor's office. They had a deadline at the end of February, and those were submitted timely to them. These will be the financial statements that will be audited this April. The financial audit that is still outstanding, the one from 21-22, it's still pending with the auditor's office. Unfortunately, this audit isn't going to be released on time. The deadline has passed again for that release, but I've signed no more extensions, which means that someone somewhere should be providing some answers to us as to the status of this audit. We need this audit to move forward with financing for the Church Street project without any concerns. So hopefully, sometime soon, there will be some answers on that. The SSI conversion for the finance office, the financial software that we have currently is eGov. We're switching over to VIP. This software was purchased a few years ago, but no further movement was made. So we are switching to the VIP software. However, the SQL server that was needed for the software was never purchased. And that server requires 6 licenses, one for each user that's in the finance office, as well as one for the window, the utility window. So I'm waiting on a quote to see what that's going to cost before we can proceed. But I can't move forward with any kind of conversion, and that conversion takes between 6 and 9 months to get planned. So I'm on hold for that as well. I spoke with Rita today, and Rita is finished with their legal program for the non-filers, and so they are completely through, and anyone that was going to have any kind of civil case has already been pursued that was going to show up. So now it's back onto the city and onto my office to do some non-filer letters and let everyone know that those income taxes are due and that we will pursue them in some manner. And then finally, as the last piece of information in here, there is information about a performance audit. As most of you know from my interview, this is where I came from, was performance auditing. I also came from a financial auditor with the state of Ohio. So a performance audit would help and could help the city in certain areas, so it may be something just to have a conversation about. But I've listed what the information is here, and if there's any discussion or anything, please feel free to reach out to me. That's all from my end. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Novotny?
Yes, a few things. I had a meeting scheduled last week with the Sheriff's Department to work on the contract for services for 2025. It got canceled due to some scheduling conflicts. I'm waiting to hear back on dates to reschedule that as soon as possible, and we'll get that done as soon as possible. We are in the process of getting our liability insurances renewed. So those are up to renew April 1st, so we're working on that. Starting the process for health insurance renewal. That will be coming due in May 1st. So this process, both of these processes are ongoing, and we'll be working on those. The health care, we just started, so as I get through this, I'll have more information to provide. We're just in the very beginning stage of that. Touch real quick, ordinance 2025-10 that you have in front of you tonight. That's the ordinance for the new work truck for water distribution. This was in the 2025 budget that was passed and approved. Just a note that this truck will be replacing a 22-year-old vehicle that is quite used up and ready to be retired. And it will be disposed of once the new vehicle, if passed, would arrive. There's several events coming up early in the spring and early summer planned for downtown. There's been some permits issued for a number of these events downtown. In the beginning of May, the Commerce Association is holding a vendor community event. I'm not quite sure what they're calling that event yet. The First Christian Church is going to be holding a craft and vendor show. That's in mid-May. I spoke last meeting about Heritage Accord is planning their dinner on the bridge. That's in mid-May. And there's also Hometown Hound has an event planned for early June, and then the annual car and bike show are planned for the end of June. As those all come forward, I'm sure there'll be more information that comes out. We'll have more details on those, and I will pass that along as I get any. Also, again this year, the veterans organizations are planning a flag retirement ceremony again. It will be held on Saturday, May 24th. It will be at the city park in the parking lot between all the ball fields. I don't have a time or anything on this yet. This is just still in the beginning stages. I believe there's a meeting next week or the week after on this that I will be trying to attend to get more information. But the date is set, and they are planning on this event. So that's all that I have.
All right, we'll move on to item 9, approval of previous minutes. That's for the regular meeting minutes, February 5th, 2025, and the regular meeting minutes, February 19th, 2025.
Mayor, if I may?
Yes, sir.
Request that we separate those and vote individually on them since I was absent for the 19th. And I will also be asking to abstain for the vote regarding the minutes for the meeting on February 19th due to not being here.
And may I add, I would be abstaining from the 5th as I was absent for that meeting.
The first is a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes of February 5th, 2025.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Mr. Exiotis and Ms. Benitez. Mr. Rufner,
Yes.
Ms. Stimper,
Abstain?
Mr. Exiotis,
Yes.
Ms. Benitez.
Yes.
Passed 3-0.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the abstention. Ms. Stimper? for the meeting minutes of February 5th.
I'll second that.
That's Mr. Axiotis and Mr. Rufner. Ms. Benitez?
Yes.
Mr. Axiotis?
Yes.
Mr. Rufner?
Yes.
Ms. Stimper? Oh, she has to abstain.
I was, I have to abstain, correct?
Sorry. Pass 3-0. The next is a motion to approve regular meeting minutes of February 19th, 2025.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it. Oh,
Mr. Axiotis, Ms. Benitez? Mr. Rufner?
Abstain?
Ms. Stimpert?
yes.
Mr. Axiotis?
Yes.
And Ms. Benitez?
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion for the abstention of Mr. Rufner for February 19th minutes due to sickness.
I will second.
Mr. Axiotis? Ms. Stimpert? Ms. Benitez?
Yes.
Mr. Axiotis?
Yes.
And Ms. Stimpert?
Yes.
I assume Mr. Rufner would abstain. Passed 3-0, both passed 3-0. Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to item 10, public hearings. This is ordinance 2025-03. This is an ordinance rezoning the property at 101 North Center Street from R residential to C1 commercial, affirming the Planning Commission's recommendation to rezone the property. Okay. Next, we have ordinance 2025-04. This is an ordinance authorizing the interim city manager to enter into an agreement to purchase and install a replacement intermediate pump from the Hydroflow Pumps and the National Pump and Process Incorporated for the Newton Falls City Water Plant. Next is ordinance 2025-05. This is an ordinance recognizing Jackson Street areas 44, 45, and 46 as parts of an unimproved street, vacating areas 44, 45, and 46 of Jackson Street and transferring the vacated sections to the adjoining property owners. Next is ordinance 2025-06. This is an ordinance authorizing the interim city manager to enter into an agreement to amend compensation provisions of the investment management agreement between the village and the Meter Public Funds Incorporated. Moving on to item 11, unfinished business. This would be an ordinance approving the recodification, editing, and inclusion of certain ordinances as parts of the various codes of codified ordinances of Newton Falls, Ohio.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Mr. Rufner and Mr. Axiotis. Discussion? Ms. Benitez?
Yes.
Mr. Axiotis?
Yes.
Mr. Rufner?
Yes.
Ms. Stimpert?
Yes.
Pass 4-0.
All right, next is ordinance 2025-03. This is an ordinance rezoning the property at 101 North Center Street from R residential to C1 commercial, affirming the Planning Commission's recommendation to rezone this property.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Mr. Exiotis, Ms. Benitez. Mr. Rufner,
Yes.
Ms. Stemper,
Yes.
Mr. Exiotis,
Yes.
Ms. Benitez.
Yes.
Pass 4-0.
All right, next is ordinance 2025-04. This is an ordinance authorizing the interim city manager to enter into an agreement to purchase and install replacement intermediate pump from Hydroflow Pumps and National Pumps and Process Incorporated for the Newton Falls City Water Plant.
I'll
Make
make
the
the, mo-
motion.
I'll second.
Mr. Rufner, Ms. Stemper. Mr. Exiotis,
Yes.
Ms. Benitez.
Yes.
Mr. Rufner,
Yes.
Ms. Stemper.
Yes.
Pass 4-0.
All right, next we have ordinance 2025-05. This is an ordinance recognizing Jackson Street areas 44, 45, and 46 as parts of an unimproved street, vacating areas 44, 45, and 46 of Jackson Street, and transferring the vacated sections to the adjoining property owners.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Ms. Benitez, Mr. Exiotis. Mr. Rufner,
Yes.
Ms. Stemper,
Yes.
Mr. Exiotis,
Yes.
Ms. Benitez.
Yes.
Pass 4-0.
All right, next is ordinance 2025-06. This is an ordinance authorizing the interim city manager to enter into an agreement to amend the compensation provisions of the investment management agreement between the village and the Meter Public Funds Incorporated.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Mr. Exiotis, Mr. Rufner. Ms. Stemper,
Yes.
Mr. Rufner,
Yes.
Ms. Benitez,
Yes.
Mr. Exiotis.
Yes.
Pass 4-0.
All right, item 12 is new business. This would be ordinance 2025-07. It's an ordinance ratifying and/or confirming the administrative overhead cost allocations to the Electric Revenue Fund, the Water Revenue Fund, and the Sewer Revenue Fund and General Fund.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Mr. Rufner, Mr. Exiotis.
Actually, if I could, real quick, Mike.
Please.
Just to go ahead and put this out there, I did have a question on this when it showed up on the agenda. For clarification on it, this is how we fund our non-revenue generating departments. So a certain percentage of each of the revenue generating departments goes to support the offices that do not generate the revenue on their own. So this basically sets up the percentages from each department. And as the previous discussions with Finance Director goes, this aligns it better than what we've had in the past because it takes out projects and things that would kind of skew the numbers a little bit. So this lines everything up as an even, not an even, but a more realistic divvying between those departments. So not one is overly tasked than the others.
Ms. Benitez,
Yes.
Mr. Exiotis,
Yes.
Mr. Rufner,
Yes.
Ms. Stemper.
Yes.
Pass 4-0.
All right, next we have ordinance 2025-08. This is an ordinance amending Newton Falls hydrant bulk water rates effective May 1st, 2025, for the years 2025 through 2026, and that the hydrant water rates are instituted with the fire hydrant usage metering policy attached as Exhibit A.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Ms. Stimpert and Mr. Rufner. Mr. Exiotis?
Yes.
Ms. Benitez?
Yes.
Mr. Rufner?
Yes.
Ms. Stimpert?
Yes.
Pass 4-0.
Next, we have ordinance 2025-09. This is an ordinance authorizing the interim city manager to enter into an agreement with National Pump and Process Incorporated to remove and repair and install a high-service pump for the Newton Falls City Water Plant.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Ms. Stimpert and Ms. Benitez? Mr. Rufner?
Yes.
Mr. Exiotis?
Yes.
Ms. Benitez?
Yes.
Ms. Stimpert?
Yes.
Pass 4-0.
All right, moving on, we have ordinance 2025-10. This is an ordinance authorizing interim city manager to enter into an agreement to purchase a 2025 Ford F-350 from Charchone Ford Lincoln, and to be upfitting the truck with a service body from Quality Truck Body for use by the water distribution plant.
Make the motion.
Second.
Mr. Rufner, Ms. Benitez? Ms. Stimpert?
Yes.
Ms. Benitez?
Yes.
Mr. Exiotis?
Yes.
Mr. Rufner?
Yes.
Pass 4-0.
And city manager enter into negotiations with John Barco for the position of police chief.
Enter into negotiations, my apologies. To direct to enter into negotiations. With John Barco for the position.
Police chief.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Ms. Stimpert and Ms. Benitez? Ms. Benitez?
Yes.
Mr. Exiotis?
No.
Mr. Rufner?
Yes.
And Ms. Stimpert?
Yes.
Pass 3-1.
All right, we're going to move on to item 13. Oh, I'm sorry.
You've still got your motion.
Oh,
No.
Appointment.
point.
Well,
All right,
motion to appoint.
for city council,
Yes.
correct, Amanda?
Ward 3, yes.
We're going to appoint Bob Burke to the vacant city council seat. This will be pending verification of eligibility with address and voter registration.
Mr. Mayor.
Please, Mr. Rufin.
Can I recommend you change that to pending residency requirements?
All right,
Because
Make
that's
that-
actually how it's, the requirements are in the
we'll
charter.
make that, change that to pending residency requirements.
Done.
All right, so now we can move on to item 13, public comments, limited to 3 minutes. Mhm.
Can't sit that long anymore. I need a chair like the mayor. Good evening, John Bariak, 660 North Canal. I'm here tonight to address a situation in Newton Falls that I think we need to look at. Since federal law says rehabs are protected, we're going to have a hard time stopping them. But why can't we work up legislation that after 30 days, those that live there can start paying us some income tax? I know we'd have to tweak it with the motels. Some of these guys are staying here 7, 8 months and they have good jobs. They pay us nothing. Now, like I say, the motels would have to report guys, because there's guys that work out there that stay 6, 7 months. Excuse me. Also, the community ought to know who's renting these houses and facilities to them. It seems like I was out collecting signatures, and I mean no disgrace to Mr. Axiotis, but they said, the people on Garfield said they're trying to open another one up on there. There's a deal going on Water Street, and I wanted to ask a question, but I want to finish first. The only way right now that I can see, unless Mr. Librium has another suggestion, and he can work up, is to have them declared a nuisance. Now, there's been a lot of business owners that won't come forward because they don't want to get in any trouble, but there's been stealing, there's been cursing. As a matter of fact, one of these sober houses a couple of years back, and I think Mr. Barker will tell you about it, they had a fist fight out in the yard. I believe any business seeing theft or any inappropriate behavior should report it to zoning, city manager, police, or the sheriff. It's the only way we're going to get them out of here. Now, I firmly believe in rehabilitation. But the size of our community, Newton Falls, should not be burdened with everybody's problem from Pennsylvania, Cleveland, Columbus, Cincinnati. The people are renting them. Are they reporting the income from these? Because, they're not, people are paying about $500 a month to stay there per guy. The other question I just have to ask, Mayor Hanson, are you aware that there's a rehab going over there in above the Phillips Heating, up where the old S&E Club is being?
No.
You're not aware of it, sir? Are you aware of it, Mr. Rufner? It's your ward. Okay,
No.
I was told by a reliable source that there is. And that's a big room. I used to be the old S&E Club, and before,
Mayor, time?
time's up? All right, well, thank you.
Finish up your thought real quick, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. That's a pretty big place up there. And there's a lot of, even before Mr. Elliott bought it, when he first bought it, there were sleeping rooms up there, and it was a big, giant S&E Club, and then they went to Kung Fu, and it's been used for a lot of things, but what I see, and I'm not going to apologize for it, is this is spread across the river, and now it's going to spread all over town. And we have 11 of them up right now. I would like to ask Mr. Librium if he would look into at least us trying to get some kind of, the finance director, to see if we could get some kind of, at least get some money off them until we can figure out something else. Thank you very much for your time tonight. Thank you, Mayor.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Brian Kraut, 247 Elizabeth Street. Pleasure to see everybody. I'd like to say that this was a very boring meeting, which is fantastic. Every time I come here, I'm glad to see that the meetings are about business, which is excellent. But the reason I'm here, and Mr. Axiotis touched on it earlier, I wish I would have put in for a longer period of time and done this earlier, but Mr. Axiotis talked about the planning and zoning meetings. And it's not just the Planning and Zoning Commission, but it's the other boards and commissions as well. We are lacking not only bodies, but having proper staffing and being able to accomplish the tasks that the boards and commissions are charged with handling. I think it's really, really important, and I think I realize that over time, with different iterations of the administration, different council members, different staffing combinations and stuff, there's been a lot of chaos. There's been a lot of moving parts. So I'm very aware of that. And I also realize that my demands or my requests, my emails and those kind of things, I hope everybody here, I wanted to come here personally and let everybody here know that I hope that I'm not coming across as attacking, although I'm sure it does come across that way because I'm very candid when I write long form, when I talk long form. So I hope everybody understands that I really don't mean to attack anybody personally because I think you guys are doing a fantastic job. I really do. But with that said, that doesn't change the fact that things need to be done properly and in a organized manner. There needs to be a standard, and that standard needs to apply to all boards and commissions and to all the different people that apply for these different positions, and then also the staffing. So we're able to keep proper minutes. Mr. Limited made a recommendation because I'd reached out about making recordings. And as Mr. Axiotis pointed out, there's questions back and forth as far as how do we go about this? What's the proper procedure? Who's providing the recording materials? Who's collecting these materials? Who's sending these things in? Who's taking them then and transcribing them? How do you know who said what on these recordings? If no one's keeping the actual minutes during the course of the meeting, those things would get lost. And those nuances are very important when it comes to recording meetings and keeping things legitimate and not having legal issues or getting tripped up down the road or having somebody challenge something. And I think it's really important that we establish those things and be consistent. And I've spoken to multiple people here, and I think that's really the important part is consistency. So that way, these positions are going to stay as they are. The council positions, the mayor, the staffing positions are going to be what they are. But the people that are here are not going to be. I mean, these people, everybody's going to change seats and these positions are going to change hands. What's important is having consistency, and I think I've talked about this before. If you're running a race and you've got somebody behind you and you're running a relay, they hand you the baton and you just keep on running. And that's really what these should be. And we don't have that right now. So I think it's important. I know there's a million different things going on. I know there's a lot of moving parts. We've had all the lawsuits. We've had all the chaos and everything over the last few years. But these things are just as important. And I just hope that that these don't continue to get slipped through the cracks because we do have real issues that need addressed. These boards and commissions exist for us to help council and help the staff and everybody do the jobs that the boards and commissions exist for. We're supposed to be specialized so we can give recommendations and suggestions to you guys. So if you have questions, we can go back and forth. But I had to adjourn the meeting last night because I don't have somebody to keep my minutes. And I've talked to the city manager about this. However the city manager chooses to organize or delegate responsibilities to subordinates is totally acceptable. I hope council, I came here to kind of talk to council and hope council will do what they can do, which is to require the city manager in his position to make sure that these things are taken care of properly. And again, this isn't, I'm not slighting anybody. I want to make sure that's very, very clear. Like I said, I know I say a lot, I write long form stuff, and I know it probably comes across very dry, but I want to make sure that I came here in person to let everybody know that we're all on the same page, and I think we all genuinely do want to go in that direction and do things the right way and do things properly. So that's what I came here tonight to say was that I hope that council will consider this and look at it. I don't know how well versed council is or how much council actually knew about these kind of things. So I wanted to bring that to light and make sure that things are being addressed and being handled properly so all the boards and commissions can work hand in hand with the council and with the staff, and we can really do some really great things. I think there's a lot of potential here in town. Thank you guys, I appreciate it.
Good evening, everyone. I just want to commend council, mayor, city manager, law director, on the selection of John Barco as the future chief of police for the community. This is, it's a good choice, and I think that he will bring back what the police department was prior to my initial departure in 2021. We're trying to put it back together, and I think he'll be the man for it. So once again, thank you very much for making the selection. I know there was several good applicants, and it was a tough choice, but I firmly believe that he's the right person for it. He knows the community, he knows the good guys, he knows the bad guys, and he knows how to run a police department. He was a sergeant in Geauga County in a community there for many years. So he has good supervisory experience and he's got a level head. And I wish him best of luck when he does take over. And I will remain to help him in any way that I can. So Thank you very much again.
We'll move into closing remarks. Mike, one thing I wanted to ask is, there's one light right up there that, it's shining right in my face. I don't want to sound like Columbo, but it's bouncing off my shiny nose right into my eyes. I don't know if we can move that one around a little bit or something, but,
Maybe it's your chair. If you'd lower your chair or do something, it wouldn't be.
this chair is certainly.
Sunglasses.
Put a hat on.
Do that. All right. Well, anyhow, I just want to, once again, thank the community for the civility and, the good government, fair play that we've seen here the past few months, and to, let's try to keep that going, because this is a very important thing for the city. And, once we get things mopped up here, we can start to work on economic development. And Columbiana has really had just a unbelievable amount of growth down there at the corners of Route 7 and 14, where the Firestone Farms are at. And my years going down to my family's drugstore in East Palestine, it was nothing but cornfields, soybean fields, a beat-down old truck stop, and a fruit stand. And if you get a look at that now, it's positively amazing. And I would urge council to have a look, or take a look, at what Columbiana's doing down there, and see if we can model something after what they're doing with economic development. That's all I have tonight. Thank you. Council, do you have anything, Mr. Acker?
I'd just like to thank Jamie for that, can't find it now, Jamie. It's here someplace. There goes the water bottle. Okay, for her Ohio Auditor State performance audit. And I think that'd be a good suggestion for all of us to try. She explained to me that you could look at the different cities and see how they're spending their money and how we can maybe spend our money more wisely. And it had the salaries that the different areas had in the different, like the mayor or the city manager or whatever. And we each have one of those. Thank you, Jamie.
I just wanted to comment, I'm thankful that Mr. Barriak came up here to talk about his concerns about these recovery houses and the growth of them in town. The reality is, and I'm going to say this, he was on council for 8 years, and from the get-go, he's always had a concern about the recovery houses. And we went through numerous law directors who've looked into the issue and said, basically, leave them alone. The courts have ruled that you cannot discriminate against them. Now, maybe there's some validity to collecting income taxes on that, but in terms of what the city can do, it seems like, at least from previous law directors, and Jeff, I actually think I talked to you about this at one point too, there's just very little we can do in terms of controlling their growth.
Councilman, it's a dangerous attempt with the federal government to try to block that. You could be looking at severe litigation, and fines, and costs.
Yeah, so I would caution us to tread lightly in terms of what we're going to possibly do, if anything, but it would require, I think, plenty of legal opinions to back whatever decisions we make. The town now has a shoestring budget. I feel like we're robbing Peter to pay Paul half the time on a lot of things. We don't have the funds, we can't afford any more lawsuits, and we can't afford any more payouts to anybody. And I mean, there's only so much attention we can give to certain things with what we've got to work with. As for the hiring of the police chief, we did go through a lot of applicants. We may not always agree on who we choose. We may have our own stance on who we thought was the best candidate, but ultimately it comes down to a vote. And with that, I'm good, so, thank you.
Julie, you have anything?
Just a couple things. I truly enjoy sitting here with all of you and being able to professionally agree to disagree and have our conversations and come to decisions, and ultimately, everything does come down to a vote. So I greatly appreciate that. In terms of, you talked about Columbiana. I spent the last week or so, one, talking with Mr. Colosimo about our downtown area, hopefully next week, being approved for historical accreditation. So hopefully that'll happen in the next week, and then it has to be sent off, I think, to the federal. In addition to that, previously we had talked about having a DORA, and there was some glitches with some timeframes. There were some current concerns. I went back through and looked at all those concerns and different things. The towns that have those are thriving. They're a nice, classy, bring people to the village type of thing. I had pulled up 2 or 3 different ones in Ohio where they had originally given them like a small window, a 2 or 3 day a week, certain hours where they allowed the DORA to happen. And they went back like a year later, year and a half later, and had expanded them. One of them, and I can't remember which one, had literally it's 7 days a week that they allow their DORA. So I would really like to encourage everyone to kind of look at DORA, and I have tons of information if you want me to email or share it with you, but kind of look at that, because I'd really like to see us consider that and have some good conversations and look into that in the near future. That's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Julie. Mr. Riffner, you have anything for us?
Yeah, just real quick. Again, first Friday of the month is always the late night in the falls uptown. Some local businesses are gonna be staying open later, so, granted, we had some really good weather yesterday, not so much good today, and it's gonna suck even worse tomorrow, so still, come on out, support the local community, support the local businesses. Granted, as much as you can, they really depend on the community, so. Other than that, that's really all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right. Call to adjourn the meeting? Anything else? Is there anything else?
Are there any comments from the administration?
No, sir.
Motion to
Did I
adjourn?
skip over you guys? Oh, I
You
did.
sure did.
I did.
Rude.
Sorry about that.
Can I make a motion to adjourn?
You sure
I'll
can.
second it.
Ms. Stimpert and Ms. Benitez? Mr. Axiotis?
Yes.
Ms. Benitez?
Yes.
Mr. Rufner?
Yes.
Ms. Stimpert?
Yes.
Pass 4-0, 8:28.
Let me hit this one up here, Mike.